to the About That podcast with me, your host, your favorite geek psychologist, your favorite pop culture enthusiast, your favorite queen of the nerds, Dr. Vanessa Hintz. And today, beautiful people, I am so tickled to not only be featuring content about one of my most favorite things in the history of forever, and that would be the epic saga that is Supernatural. Not only are we going to be talking about Supernatural, but this is a conversation that I had with one of the most amazing people I have known in my entirety of life, the amazing, the incomparable Dr. Shelly Clevenger, who I lovingly refer to as my supernatural soul sister, which we will absolutely get into during the course of this conversation. And so, without further ado, please enjoy this conversation specifically related to Supernatural Season 3. Friends, I am so pleased to be joined today by my dear friend, my supernatural soul sister, Dr. Shelly Clevenger. Shelly, thank you so much for being with us. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you for having me. So I am the chairperson of the Department of Victim Studies at Sam Houston State University, the first and only Department of Victim Studies in the world. And I do research on all different types of victimization, write books, teach classes, anything related to victims. That's what I do.
Yes, and I will just share for anyone who doesn't know, which is everyone. Shelly and I connected over our love for Supernatural. So I was watching the series for the first time, and I remember you reached out to me and you said, it's so interesting to see someone like watching the show for the first time, because of course, y'all know I was late. The show had been off for like 2 years and I just started watching it. But I was posting about my journey and how much I loved it. And you reached out to me and you were like, this is amazing. And look at this friendship that has blossomed. So people,
Right.
Supernatural heals. It brings people together. It is so amazing. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I get very excited to talk about this. So we're going to talk about season 3 today. And fun fact, season 3 is actually the shortest season of all, because it happened during the 2007-2008 writer's strike, which, oh my gosh, at the time of this recording, history is repeating itself, right? We're in another writer's strike as we speak. But season 3 of Supernatural aired between October 4th of 2007 and May 15th of 2008. And again, instead of the normal 22 or 23 episodes, there were only 16. And from what I understand, as they went into the season, they obviously didn't know that this was going to happen. So as the writer's strike was coming about, they sort of had to change all of these storylines, which actually, in an article I read, I think one of the creators was thankful that this happened because we got the story the way that it is. So, overview of season 3. So at the end of season 2, season 2 was a lot. Okay, at the end of season 2, we remember that the Winchesters were battling all these demons that were coming out of this open gate of hell, because we're not gonna go back over that. Just listen to my episode about season 2. But at the end of season 2, all of these demons had escaped this gate of hell. Dean actually made a deal with a crossroads demon to save Sam's life. So Sam, who was dead, came back to life. Dean in turn sacrificed himself and was given 1 year to live. And so as we pick up season 3, Dean is sort of in this last year of his life, and has sort of accepted, we're going to put that in air quotes, accepted that he only has 1 year to live. And so the season starts with the brothers tracking down all of these demons. And what I noticed initially, like from season 2 to season 3, is you could tell they got more of a budget, because the way that the demons looked in season 2 versus season 3, like leaps and bounds better. Like, okay, we love it. And so Sam gets involved, we're gonna put that in air quotes too, with a demon named Ruby, who claims to know how to get Dean out of this deal. And she's like, let's help each other out and I can save your brother and it's gonna be so great. Eventually at the end of the season, we find out that she was lying. She doesn't know how to save Dean, and it's just all dramatic. There is a new demon on the scene named Lilith, who, interestingly enough, is played by a child most often than not. And so there's this adorable child that's doing these like terrible demonic things. We are also introduced to Bella. I think we're introduced to her in season 2, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I can't remember, but yeah, she's featured prominently in this season though.
Yes, so Bella, for those of you who are also fans of The Walking Dead, is Maggie from The Walking Dead. And she is a thief who comes into contact with the Winchesters because she's often taking items, occult items, talismans, stuff like that, and just selling them to people. Bella also just came to a very unceremonious end, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But we find out at the end of the season that she has actually made a 10-year deal with the demon, and so she's about to die. Like, it was just dramatic. And the last thing I'll say, sort of as an overview to season 3, some important notes that I think throughout the series that become prominent. We're introduced to Lisa and Ben for the first time. In season 3, episode 2, The Kids Are All Right. So Lisa is one of Dean's old flames. We're introduced to her and her son Ben, which a lot of people still believe is actually Dean's son because they're very much alike, and she just become sort of like a safe space for him. We also have the first and I think only Christmas episode of Supernatural in season 3. We see the first sighting of the very popular anti-possession tattoos in season 3, episode 12. And then lastly, one of probably the most famous quotes from the entirety of the series, "Family don't end with blood," is actually from season 3 also. And so season 3, for those of you who are unaware, is actually the second highest ranked by critics with a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. And so that is our overview. Supernatural was on for a long time, so there's a lot of lines to draw, and we just don't got time for all of that. So that's going to be our overview of season 3. And so I'm going to invite you, Shelly, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite and least favorite moments from the season.
So this season, I always think of it as the best and worst of times. I feel that there are some really highlights, the things that I love. So I love the Christmas episode. I love that we get to find out where Dean's necklace comes from.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite moments from this season. I also love the ghost facers.
Ghost facers.
Yes. I love when they make an appearance.
Yes.
I find them, I feel like Supernatural did such a great job kind of pinpointing those ghost shows and doing a parody, but yet it was still believable enough in this world. Yes. And so I love that. I also love this episode because it's just Sam, Dean, and Bobby. So it's before Cass, it's before Crawley. It's kind of like the last season of just these folks being together. And I love that. And we're going to talk about the mystery spot, but I also love that we meet Gabriel, or the trickster.
Yes.
I feel like those are the things that I love the most because they're so light. At least for me, I laugh or I smile when I think about them, and I rewatch those episodes more than other ones. So those are the best of times for me out of season 3. Yes,
and I'll just, before we move on to the worst of times, I will also say Ghost Facers was probably my favorite episode from season 3. And as you mentioned, it is absolutely hilarious. Like, everything about the Ghost Facers is hilarious. The other thing that I would say, and it was part of the reason I fell in love with Supernatural, is because it was like scary to me. And it's because it's like found footage style. And found footage is like one of my favorite types of scary movies. Like, think Blair Witch, like that type of, not necessarily that film, but that style of filming. I think it's there's like an intimacy about it. There is, it's like playing a scary video game. You never know what's going to happen when the camera turns. And I would also say, I feel like with the Ghost Facers episode, in like true Supernatural fashion, they broke the fourth wall and they said something about the writer's strike. I remember in the course of the episode, somebody made mention of there being a writer's strike. And I'm like, this is why Supernatural they do it better than I think anybody else. And so I love the Ghost Facers. I love that. I had to do my hand like that, Ghost Facers. And I would also say, just honorable mention, the episode immediately before that, episode 12, Justin Bello, I think was
Yeah.
another, I think just visually, them being in that jail with all those demons coming and the way that they had just an amazing, amazing like piece of TV for the budget they had for everything. I think it was amazing. So those
Yeah.
would be my highlights, Ghost Facers. So tell me a little bit about those lowlights.
I feel like this season is really sad in a lot of ways. The long distance call episode where the loved ones are, they think that it's them calling. I cannot watch it. I have to usually skip over it. If you are somebody who's lost someone, I think I kind of put myself in that position and I think about, if someone was calling me, how like just devastating that would be. Even if it's not real, it seems so real to the people in the episode. I find that episode so sad and hard to watch. And then the ending of Dean in hell. I mean, obviously, I've seen this series multiple times. I know that it's all right, but just the torture that we know he goes through. And also Bella doesn't have an easy time. And I find that really sad. Like, I feel like there's just some really overarching sadness. And then we know Dean's going to be all right. But when you're watching it for the first time, it's like, is it going to end? Is this really the end of Supernatural? Is Dean going to die? So I love and hate season 3 for the fun, quirky episodes, but then these sad episodes, I feel like I have a harder time watching season 3 for those reasons. Those couple episodes are really difficult.
Yes, and I think that is one thing that I value about the show in its entirety is its ability to take us on that journey of like even the mystery spot episode, which we're going to talk about, right? It was so sad, and then there was like this interlay of comedy that I think that's Supernatural, and I think even the chemistry between Sam and Dean, it makes it possible. But I would agree with you 10,000%. This was a heavy, heavy, heavy season. Again, just thinking about Lilith, and this was the last episode where she was possessing this child in the house of these parents who are looking at this embodiment that is their daughter, but they know it's not, and she's doing like that was heavy. And I think I absolutely agree with your point about. I was just telling my mom this the other day. That depiction of hell, we see hell so many times, right, throughout the series, but that depiction at the end of season 3 with Dean chained, and you see all these like bodies, like as far as the eye can see, terrifying, like absolutely terrifying. And I think the fact that he got to this place where he didn't want to go, there was this resignation of, okay, I'm gonna die, whatever, let's YOLO. And then he didn't want to go, and to know that he did go to hell, and that's what it was like. Even talking about it now, like it makes my chest hurt because again, he's fine. Obviously, he's not there. But it was heavy. It was heavy, heavy, heavy. And that long distance call episode that you referenced, and for those that may be unfamiliar, in this episode, people were getting what they believed were calls from their loved ones that had passed on, that were essentially just calling them at random times, just chatting, and then eventually we get to a place where they would ask them to do something terrible. And again, what's the word I want to use? That desire to want to just hear their voice one more time, or even if there's no scientific way that this could be possible, I think desperation is the word I want to use. That desperation, I felt
it. Me too.
I felt it. Ugh. I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, oh gosh. And this conversation is not going to get any lighter. So I'm just going to let y'all know that now. When Shelly and I do panels, we typically talk about things that get heavy because victim studies, it's heavy.
Yeah.
And necessary. And absolutely necessary. So with that, I want to talk about each of the brothers in turn and sort of their victimization throughout the course of the season. And I would even invite conversation about, Bella, because I think you brought that up. And I think that we can have a whole conversation about her, right? And her whole story. But starting with Dean. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the season, it's real funny, right? Like he's eating whatever he wants, he's having sex with whoever he wants, like YOLO, I got a year left. Come on, Sam, like let's live it up. Sam continues to call out Dean for his hypocrisy, right? Like you were so mad at dad when he sold his soul to save you and you turned around and did the same thing. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? We see in the fourth episode of the season, Dean is having a conversation with, he's like trapped in a basement with this lady. I think she's a demon, but they're having a conversation. And he says, and this is something I felt in my heart of hearts, he said making that deal was kind of liberating because he basically said, I'm just so tired. Like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders literally every single day. Like I'm saving the world every single day. I'm tired and I don't want to do it anymore. And this is my way out. We see him later on, sort of at the midpoint of the season, episode 10, Dream a Little Dream of Me. He's actually having a conversation with himself in his mind, his like demon self, and then there's him, and this is a whole Freud would have a field day in terms of the conversation that they were having about this is what you're gonna become, Dean. And it was just like a whole mess. And it was at the end of that episode, I think, that he came to the realization that he didn't want to go to hell, that he didn't want to die and have to exist in eternal damnation. And then as you referenced, Shelly, the long distance call episode, when we see him sitting by the phone, waiting for his deceased father to call him from beyond the grave, because his father has sort of said, I know how to get you out of your deal. So not only does he want to just talk to his dad because he wants to talk to his dad, but he wants to talk to his dad to try to get out of this sort of, again, eternal damnation. And so all of that, whew, that is a lot. So talk to us about, from your perspective, Dean as a victim throughout this season.
So when I think about this season, I think about Dean initially. I mean, it's not that he's in denial. He knows he's going to die, but it's not as real at the beginning. And he also, I think, had a little bit of a high because he saved Sam. He did it. He kind of met that goal. But as time goes on, we see it become more real. And I mean, we can compare it to grief, but you can also compare it to, people who experience trauma. Sometimes there's that denial of something bad happening and you try to like put up those walls and you don't want to face it. But as time goes on, things kind of chip away at those walls. And I think you can see that with Dean as time goes on in this series, things become real and he is tired, but he's not ready to give up. And that's one of the things I love so much about Supernatural is no matter how bad things are, they don't give up. They get tired, they get beaten down, but they always keep going, which I would also compare to real life victims because you don't get to choose what happens to you sometimes and the trauma you experience. You have to carry it with you. And Dean carries all the trauma because he remembers his mom. He had that life growing up in a way that Sam didn't. And he just brings all that with him, but he still keeps going. And that, I mean, I love both characters, but the fact that Dean had to grow up with so much memory of the trauma in a way that Sam didn't, I think it shows how brave he is, and he willingly goes to hell.
Yes.
So, which I would say a lot of victims, their every day is kind of going to hell, in a lot of ways. I'd like to teach a supernatural and victimization class.
Yes, and I'm going to be the first guest lecturer. Like, excuse me. But you mentioned, and this is something I feel like from a clinical perspective, as someone who has dealt with people who've experienced trauma in a less discreet, that's not the word I want to use. When I think about the people that I've worked with in the past that have experienced trauma, it's been more so of a chronic vicarious trauma. You think about people who have experienced like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, as opposed to a very specific event type of trauma. And I think that either way, one thing that I think that I value about Supernatural and to the point that you're making, I think Dean and Sam always continue because they have each other's support. And I think that that's part of why, which I haven't watched it yet, so don't come for me, people, but I think that's why people didn't respond to the Winchesters the way that they responded to Supernatural, because the crux of that show, whether it's toxic or healthy or otherwise, is the relationship between these two brothers and the way that they support one another. And I think like you mentioned, Dean and we'll talk about Sam too, they keep going, and I wonder what it would be like. And we see at various points in the series when they don't have that source of support, how much more difficult or how different that perception of like I got to keep going, how that changes. And I think when we sort of use that as a sort of metaphor, for lack of a better word, when we're working with people who have experienced trauma in real life, how different does your getting back up become when you have someone to help you, when you have support? You know what I'm saying?
I do. And for Dean too, he feels like he has to take care of Sam, which, thinking of myself as a parent or anyone who's a caretaker, it's like bigger than you when you have someone else to take care of. And, we see it throughout the seasons, but I mean, Sam could take care of himself. He is capable, right? But Dean feels that need or that pull. And so we see so much of that motivation. But for me, when I think about some of the victims that I've interviewed, they talk about how they keep going is because they have people to like take care of, or they have people that rely on them. And so for Dean, he keeps going until in this season until he can't go anymore because he's literally in hell.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that you say that too, because I feel like I'm having like a little epiphany. But when you think about those intergenerational patterns, Dean again did the exact same thing for Sam that John did for him.
Yep.
John felt this obviously as a parent, right? Like these are my boys. Of course I would lay my life down for them. And Dean, as a sort of secondary surrogate father for Sam, literally did the exact same thing. And when Sam pointed that out, Dean, like someone who has walls up, was like, no, like you talking about? No, I'm fine. This is fine. And then, as like you mentioned, Shelly, as the time goes on and those walls start to come down, when we see those little vulnerable moments with Dean, I've talked about it on the show before. We see these little vulnerable moments when he's in the basement with that lady, and he's kind of like, I feel liberated, like I feel good. When he has these moments with Sam, or when he has moments with Bobby, where you kind of see that slip with Cass, obviously, moving forward, you see that slip, you see those walls come down, and I think that it just clicked for me. Like it literally is the exact same thing, but I think about that from a clinical perspective again. That was a learned behavior, and I talked about this when I talked about episode or season 1 about Dean's parentification. Like that's a learned behavior. You know what I'm saying? Like it's ooh wee. Ooh wee. I see this Supernatural is the gift that keeps on giving. Like no matter how many times I watch it, there's always something new. And the other thing I'd say about Dean in this season, and you all have heard me say before, like I identify as an existentialist, and the way that they sort of portrayed this existential angst, and again, for in very non-philosophical, like basic terms, existential angst is sort of like a death anxiety. Like I know what it is like to be me and be alive. I don't know what anything after that is like. And I always thought that with Supernatural was interesting because they do have so much knowledge about what happens after we die. And still there is a layer of uncertainty. And I feel like Dean's emotional sort of roller coaster throughout the course that you kind of described, you mentioned we can think about it in terms of grief, we can think about it in terms of response to trauma. I would also say that we can think about it with regard to existential angst. It's like there are moments where we feel like, yep, one day I'm going to die and that's fine. And then there are moments when we feel very, very scared about that because we literally have no idea. And I would argue that part of being a human is navigating all of those tricks and turns, ups and downs, all of that, right? Like we navigate that in the best way we know how. And I think again with Dean, he was doing it in the best way that he knows how. Whether hindsight is 2020. I'm like, why would you do that? But I
Mhm.
think he was doing it in the best, in the only way that he knew how, particularly given all of the other circumstances of his life. You are in mortal danger every single day because of
Yeah.
what, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, Dean. And so we have prefaced this and we have made it to the time where we're going to talk about the mystery spot. I am so excited to talk about the mystery spot. So, for those of you who are unaware, season 3, episode 11, fan favorite, the mystery spot. I'm going to read this description to you all. And again, it is a gross misrepresentation. But according to Wikipedia, in the mystery spot episode, Dean is killed after looking into a case about the disappearance of a man with Sam. The next morning, Sam is shocked to find Dean alive and is hit with the realization that he is reliving the day before. So really, this is like Supernatural's Groundhog Day episode, um, where essentially Sam is reliving the same day over and over and over again. And in each of these days that he's reliving, Dean is killed in some sort of terrible way. And so when you and I talked to Shelly, when you and I talked about having this conversation, we specifically talked about this episode. Like, we want to talk about this episode, particularly Sam and his perseverance, his resilience. So talk to us a little bit about that in the mystery spot episode.
Yeah, so this is actually my favorite episode.
Yeah.
I dressed up as Doris the waitress at the Supernatural convention because I love this episode. Um, it is a sad episode. I mean, there's a lot of comedy in it, and it does have some kind of levity, but it's reliving a trauma every single day and seeing the person you love most in the whole world killed every single day. And so, one of the reasons I like this episode is actually because it's sad. Victim studies, I like sad stuff, but I like it because Sam keeps going. Once again, this theme through the show, he keeps going. He doesn't know that it's going to end, but he hopes, he's, always hopeful that there'll be some sort of solution and he'll finally be able to save Dean. And I often use this example when I talk to my students. So a lot of my students work out in the world with victims, and it's kind of like the mystery spot. It's not somebody who they love, but every day they're seeing these horrible things happen. And you could put this with other first responders or people who work in the medical field, but you're seeing this tragedy every single day, and you still have to go through the motions. And I think it can be really traumatic. I actually teach a class that's kind of related to this about burnout and self-care for victim service professionals, because how do you, like Sam, see these horrible things every day, but you still have to get up. You still have to go down, have breakfast like they do. You still have to do it when you know what's coming. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons I love the episode, which I know is sort of morbid, maybe, or sad, but I just feel like it's so hopeful because there are these real people and there is Sam. And no matter how awful the things are, they keep going.
Yes. I love what you said about sort of drawing that comparison between what Sam, we see him dealing with in the episode, and first responders. And I think, as a therapist, that is one thing that I talk to my students about, that people who are not therapists always want to know, like, how do you hold all of that stuff? And I always tell people that is one of the most difficult things for me, is to I tell my husband all the time, being a therapist, imagine the friend that calls you that wants to vent about the worst possible thing that's happened to them, and imagine that happening 8 times in a row every day, or 6 times in a row every day. Like, imagine going to breakfast every day knowing that when you walk out of here, something terrible is going to happen to the person that you care about. Like, it is a lot. And I think that, to your point, there's a hope in it, because again, if we can get through this, the darkest time, like, where else can we go but up? And so I appreciate that comparison. And I think in the episode we see eventually, this sort of plays out, which again, I don't understand how this happened, but my mom said you should never try to figure out supernatural because you'll just get to the point where it doesn't logically make sense. But we get to the point where one of the times that Dean dies, Sam continues on, right, with his life. And this is like a 6-month period that we see
Mhm.
after Dean's death that Sam has sort of he's like really like jacked actually, like physically.
Mhm.
I was like, okay. He was like really jacked. And he's sort of on this revenge type of thing because he knows that the trickster has done this, right? At this point, he
Mhm.
still doesn't know that this is like a, I don't know if it was like an illusion, what we would call it, but
Yeah.
Sam is sort of hell bent on revenge. He is like one track mind, like I'm gonna find this person and I'm gonna kill them. And so this sort of coalesce with this sort of confrontation between Sam and the trickster. And this is Sam 6 months after Dean's death, so still grieving, but also very sort of hard, like I'm about to murder
Mhm.
you. And the trickster says something, and this is something that I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm gonna read this quote verbatim. The trickster says, "There's a lesson here. The way you two keep sacrificing yourselves for each other, nothing good comes out of it, just blood and pain." Which I think is interesting given the context of the conversation we had about how much they're sacrificing for each other, how much they're being there for each other is actually a strength. And then
Mhm.
we hear the trickster here, which again, he got a whole backstory that we don't know yet. But the trickster here is saying, like, this is too much. Y'all need to stop it. Like, all you're doing is causing pain.
Mhm.
My question would be pain for who? You know what I'm saying? But that whole
So I'm gonna whip out a Star Wars quote here in our our supernatural conversation.
double
Qui
nerdy, double nerdy.
No. So Qui-Gon Jinn, my one of my favorite Jedi says your perception determines your reality. And so for the trickster, that quote is completely accurate. That's how he perceives the world. That's how he sees Sam and Dean. But I think for Sam and Dean, like that's how they save each other. That's how they love each other. Yes, there's blood. Yes, there's pain. But I mean, from my perspective, I see it as like there's also joy, there's also hope, there's family, and then like inspiration to the people they save. And I know some people get killed along the way, but they do a lot of good. And so, that's how the trickster sees the world. But I don't know if that's accurate for Sam and Dean.
I I love what you just said because I think what I hear too are blood and pain, things that are to be avoided. Because again, for Sam and Dean and their perspective, such is a way of life. Which again,
Yeah.
nobody is saying is good, bad, or whatever, but that's
Yeah.
part of their life. And I
Yeah.
think even as a therapist, right? Like my goal is never. I was watching Hoarders last night. First of all, y'all, I love Hoarders. And one of the psychologists on Hoarders said, it's not my job to make you feel better. It's my job to let you know that however you feel, you're going to be okay. And I think that inherent in this quote and what you just said, I love. Pain is to be expected. That's also as an existentialist, life is pain, right? Pain is to be
Mhm.
expected, and also joy is to be expected. Also hope is to be expected. And so I love what you just said because I think
Oh,
that's so, again, so much of the reason that this show is so popular and so still to this day is because of the relationship between the brothers. But how many of people have had conversations just like you and I talk about this sort of codependency between Sam and Dean, or talk about their reliance on each other and how it's so terrible. Yes, and you know what I'm saying? Look at this other
mhm.
aspect of it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And I get the points about how it could be damaging for them, but I mean ultimately, I guess because I'm an optimist, I think it can be really beautiful. And they did a lot of good along the way.
And I think what I would underscore exclamation point highlight several times about what you said, their perception of their relationship is their reality. So it ain't none of my business. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like if they're, as long as your relationship is not causing harm to me, live your best life. If you
Mhm.
want to be, you and whoever want to be dependent on each other, if you are consenting and it's not causing harm to you or harm to others, live your best life. And I think that that is inherent in what you just described, which is I think the trickster sees harm in what they're doing, whereas they're kind of like, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
What? And he got a whole situation with him that when we get to season whatever, when it is
Yeah.
revealed who he is, we'll have a conversation about that. But I also want to talk about Bella because we sort of alluded to this, and we see Bella. I think she was in season 2 and season 3, maybe just season 3, but she is this very like she's beautiful. She has a British accent, which I feel like makes people in America, it's like, ooh, that's so exotic. She is conniving. She's sort of like seen as someone who's just in it for the money. And then when it gets time for her to sort of meet her end, we learn about her traumatic past. And so, spoiler alert, people, we learned that Bella made a deal with the demon when she was 14 because her father was abusive. I'd say
Mhm.
her parents were abusive. And she made a deal that her father would be killed and her parents would be killed, and she would be given 10 years to live. And she lives in great prosperity. She's rich. She obviously escapes this victimhood. And when it's time for her 10 years to be up and she has to go to hell, naturally, she doesn't want to go. And she
Mhm.
tries to the best of her ability to do what she needs to do to not meet this end. And unfortunately, she does. But I think what I wish would have happened for Bella is that we got more with her because I feel like she was literally 2 minutes from dying when we learned that she
Yeah.
was victimized. And I feel like she deserved better.
Mhm. I also think she deserved better. I wish they could have focused a little bit more on that. I know she's was a secondary character and our main focus is kind of on the brothers and then Bobby to a certain extent, but yeah, I think that her story is important and a lot of kids who experience abuse would probably make a similar type deal. Especially, the fact that she did it when she was younger and kind of right in the midst of being abused. I do wish we could have had more for her too. And I also was hoping she could be saved because the brothers get saved.
Yes, yes. And I was thinking too, this has been a criticism, right, of
Yeah.
Supernatural and the way that they treat women, the female identified characters, and how they are not granted the same leniency. I don't know what the right word is, but
Privilege. Yeah,
yeah, the
privilege.
same privilege,
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
privilege as Sam and Dean. Which again, to the we understand that the show is about them. And can we get one? Can we get one woman who doesn't mean like a grisly end? You know what I'm saying? And I think too, I would be interested in your perspective about, again, we see Bella as this before we understand her past, right? Like she's just money hungry, whatever. Like she's painted in this very like self-serving way.
No.
When her history is revealed as a victim, as a trauma survivor, how would you say, even just from a conceptual perspective or a clinical perspective, that changed the way that you understood her sort of self-serving, and I'm using air quotes.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you mean?
I mean, I think it made sense. At least, I mean, for me, I would say people who, especially have been victimized, like she has, they have to look out for themselves first and foremost because nobody else is. And so all the things that she did made complete sense. I also think, you know, people like to villainize people, especially people who are against Sam and Dean, right? But even before I knew she was a victim, I was like, look at her showing up.
Yes.
Sam, Sam and Dean. I was like impressed. I really enjoyed her kind of besting them. But after we get her backstory, I was like, of course she would want to do all of these things or be trying to look out for her because there's nobody else. She doesn't have a brother. She doesn't have someone who can take care of her. And so it made complete sense. And I, of course, empathized and sympathized with her after hearing that. But yeah, I wish she could have been saved. That's why this season is so sad for me.
Yes, yes.
Because I
Her
was like,
final
poor
moment,
Bella.
her final scene, like
Mhm.
first, she's an amazing actress,
Yeah.
just first and foremost. But her sort of resignation, she did everything she possibly could to hold off these hellhounds, right? And she is on the phone with Dean, and he's like, "Bitch, you about to die." Like I think he called her a bitch, like in her last moments, and he's like,
Mhm.
"Ah, whatever." And then I think she like says something to them that sort of ends up helping them in some way, shape, or form. But that is a scene that's very hard for me to watch. First, just her
Mhm.
entire backstory of like that. And again, what 14-year-old who does not have a fully formed like
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex is
Mhm.
gonna understand the gravity of in 10 years I'm gonna be dead. But right now I could be okay, like it just her last moments, like even talking about it now, I'm like, whoo, she ooh, because I mean, she was a boss lady, and I too was like, okay, Bill, like, okay, but she deserved better.
She did, and most victims, especially kids, but you can put this to adults, whenever they're in like a relationship or a situation where they're being harmed, they just want it to stop.
Yes,
So for her, like she took that opportunity to make it stop to protect herself, which is why it's so sad to me that, she did get that 10 years of freedom, but then she ended up going to hell.
and I feel like if I'm not mistaken, spoiler alert, this is the only instance I think throughout Supernatural where we see a demon, like a child, make a deal with a demon. Because I
Mhm.
feel like I know demons are demons, but dang, y'all just out here like making deals with kids.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand. Like what? Like it just I don't think that we see that at any other point. If I'm not mistaken, I mean we see kids like doing whatever, but not
Yeah.
deal with a child. Because even me thinking about that again, my 14-year-old self, my 10-year-old self, I would probably make a deal for a candy bar just because you
Yeah.
don't understand. Like, and so I,
Mm-mm. Pre-Crawley, I would say, things were run looser. Then he came and
we're almost there. I'm so excited. Like, I'm so excited because as you mentioned, like, this is my first rewatch and understanding that this is the sort of last time we see the sort of main trio of guys without all these other characters, which again introduce more complexity but
yeah.
also hilarity. Like I think I'm more excited for Crowley to come as opposed to
Mhm.
Castillo, which again that's not a shade,
Yeah.
but Crowley he's amazing.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
I love everything about him. So this has just been a delight, and I am so thankful. I want to thank you again, Shelly, for spending this time with us, for talking about Supernatural, for being so excited about it, as excited as I am, and as excited as I'm sure anybody who's listening to us is. And so, before we go, any sort of last thoughts or sort of overall lessons that you would share that you took from this season? Sort of anything that we talked about that you want to underscore.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just that they keep going even when things are hard. And even when Dean thinks he's going to die and it's kind of the end, he still goes and helps people. I think it would have been very easy to curl up on the couch under a blanket, or go live your best life in Vegas. He loves when they go to Vegas, but he didn't. He kept kind of pushing and doing his job. And I also think that Sam pushing him to try to be like, hey, man, like maybe we could figure something out. Like maybe I can save you. Maybe I can help you. Like they both didn't give up. And I think that theme is through the series, but this season feels like they really pushed that narrative, which I appreciated.
And I think to your point earlier, the fact that it's the basically the two of them plus Bobby against the world. Like I think as all of these other characters and things, especially spoiler alert, as we're going to introduce the angels in the next season, I think this was sort of like mortal people trying to do what they can to sort of out duel these sort of immortal forces, which again I think as an existentialist, part of what I appreciated again, which was so heavy and also awesome about this season. And I think about the show in its entirety, but particularly in this season, these are just two dudes, two regular schmegular human being dudes that have come back from the dead, obviously, but still, like, these are just they're not angels, they're not demons, they're not witches, they're not whatever. They're just two dudes that are trying to use what is at their disposal and use their skills to basically outsmart a system that's not made for them to succeed. And as a Black person in America, I'm like, what? You speaking my language? Like, I'm just trying to live. I'm just trying to live. And so I would say too about I would just underscore what you said about the feels. That's one thing that I really appreciate about season 3. And again, it's the reason that we love the show. It gives you everything. You had laughter, you have tears, you have fine people, just very attractive people that we get to look at all the time. Whatever your sort of there's something for everyone. And I would say too, I really love these early seasons of Supernatural because there's so many sort of classic horror elements that I think as the show goes on, they kind of get away from, which is not a shade. I think the story just gets more complex, but these early seasons where again you have like found footage, they make so many references to like classic horror films that I love it. And I think it's part of the reason that again I fell in love with the show because there's so many things about it that I enjoy that are all wrapped up in this beautifully attractive package that I absolutely love. And so we know that coming in season 4, obviously we have the angels. And I think that this season did well to sort of foreshadow all these complexities of morality. Like we've talked about that a bit on the show, particularly with I feel like season 2 had some of that, but like just because someone is an angel, does that mean that they're good? Just because someone is in hell, does that mean they're bad? No, spoiler alert. So as we continue on, good people, we'll talk more about all of these things. And again, Shelly, thank you so much. Please tell all of the good people where they can find you on social media should they want to chat with you.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm at Dr. Clevenger on Twitter, and then the Sam Houston State University Department of Victim Studies.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you again so much. Thank you all for your time. We love you. We appreciate you. And until next time, beautiful people.